So I think typically the only motivation from a broader perspective for any company to do international SEO would be that they want to target a very specific region or a set of regions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, that can happen for a new company that say, hey, we only want to sell to, let's say, French people living in France, right? And maybe another company that says our targeted market is Spain or maybe only Spanish people, with X, Y, and Z background or something like that. But then there are also companies who are trying to grow super big, right? And they cannot achieve their growth goals unless they cover all of the different markets one by one. So of course they're going to start with English as a general market because most of the world speaks English. We search in
Mm-hmm.
English. We do a lot of stuff in English. But then when they are already at a specific point in terms of the growth journey, they would decide, let's now go one step ahead. Now let's try to connect with our buyers in different regions on a much deeper level. So that's when they decide, hey, we can improve conversion rates on our content, um, that is being consumed by, for example, you know French people or Spanish people, or in Portugal or maybe in other areas of the world. If we simply have an international SEO strategy, because the content they, that they would be seeing in that case would resonate better, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that simply means if I'm a French guy, I know English, but I cannot, like, culturally connect with it, with the content, for example, then of course that would also lack a emotional connection, right? Like I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
always be able to connect emotionally with the content, which means the probability of me converting to a French written content with someone who understands my day-to-day pains and the way that I search and the way that I talk,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I consume information, versus a simple native English writer, that simply wrote a piece of information, would be higher, right? So I would be my
Mm-hmm.
inclination towards conversion would be higher when I consume content in my own language. And it's not just about language; it's more about culture, I think. Simply because you just feel an inclination, right? Because, like, when someone knows your language, they speak about your culture in the way that you live your life, in the way that you do everything. So so overall, it's about growth for companies. So they decide whether they, of course, some companies might be like, hey, we only want to sell to this one or two regions, right? So for them,
Mm-hmm.
it's the only SEO. It's not international SEO. It's the only SEO that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, I think, for companies, let's say like ClickUp or Active Campaign, or maybe other big companies that they want to go really big, right? Like they want to conquer the whole world within their market. They really want to dominate their industry. That can only happen if they, of course, start with the basic content in terms of English to cover most parts of the world, but then to build a deeper connection with region-specific audiences, they do international SEO. And it's not just about content; it's also about making sure that the content gets discovered. So, and that's where the
Mm-hmm.
technical part of international SEO gets in, right? So you, of course, create the content, you translate it into different languages. That sounds very simple, but then the technical element of it is, have we how can we make sure that the Hreflang tags are set up properly, right? How can we then make sure, um, that the tracking, right, like reporting or tracking, is done properly? How can we segment the reports to say, hey, this is the total
Mm-hmm.
traffic that we got from Spanish market, this is the total traffic that we got from French market, and the conversion rates, on French content looks like this, they look like this for Spanish
Mm-hmm.
content or something like that. So it's like you customize the content to the audience that you're targeting within a specific region, and then on top of it you sprinkle some SEO magic to make it more discoverable. So,
Mm.
like, companies should be very conscious of when is it the right time for them to invest in it, and whether they have a solid reason to do that or not. So, like, for example, the last company that I was working at, I remember the it was a startup based in San Francisco. And one day, so I was working closely with their CEO. It was an early stage company, a SaaS product. And one day the CEO was like, hey, within Webflow, there's an option to translate all of these pages into different languages. Shall I just do it? And I was just like chatting with him, and I was like, that is going to result in us tripling our pages of the website suddenly, right? So because currently, let's say if we have 300 pages and all of the pages are in English, if you click those two buttons for French and Spanish, suddenly you will have about 900 pages in total, right? Just giving an example, but of course the scale of those pages was like really huge.
Mm-hmm.
So so I was concerned whether, like, I think we should take a step back and first plan things well. So again, thinking of those um, hreflang tags that we use, and other overall technical hygienes, where to put all of that content, how to make it discoverable, where, how can search engines crawl all of that content so that finally searchers can discover that content within their region. Because, for example, if Google is currently showing a particular version of your content, let's say you have a page in, around email marketing in English, in French, and in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
um, and historically all of your English content has been, performing pretty fine in French and in Spanish, right? Certainly if you created a French version of it, it might give Google a confused signal, like, what page do you really want me to
Mm-hmm.
rank? Do you want me to still rank the English one that I've been ranking so far, or do you want me to now rank this French version? And that is where the hreflang tag typically helps with, right? Like, it helps clarify
Mm-hmm.
to Google, hey, this is the content that I want to rank in this one particular region. So but with that founder, within that company, and by the way, nothing against that company, really, I really enjoyed my time there. But just talking about this one particular scenario, I remember they instantly, by just pressing 2 to 3 different buttons right there, they created like tons of new pages on the website. Now, there was no planning again, there, in fact, there was no thought process why we needed those pages, right? So it just felt like an option that we can do it, so we should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that adds more complexity than it benefits, really. So first think whether expanding into different regions is really, really, is there a business case against it, right? Like, is there a particular business reason that you want to create this content for those searches? If not, don't just do because everyone else is talking about it. So, because, like, in that case, you're doing more harm than good. And then finally, of course, have someone who can understand all of this, who has experience with dealing with international SEO, specifically if you're a big company. So, like, smaller companies, they can say, oh, we have, we've created about 50 blog posts, and we want to translate it into Spanish and French. That's fine, they can do that, right? But when we're talking about companies like Active Campaign, who can have like a, or maybe other, tech companies, big unicorn companies, who can have really big technical messes created if things are not taken care of, then it's really important for them to have someone with the knowledge and the expertise to lead that through. So so, that would be my one recommendation for companies, to be really thoughtful of this. Why exactly are they doing it? And don't just do it. Like, there are companies who are not even doing well from an English content perspective, although they're a bit, like, 80% of their market is, for example, US, or other parts of the world who are English focused, and still they would be more inclined to uh, expand into French and Spanish. Like, it doesn't make sense. You haven't
Mm-hmm.
done a lot for your main user base, and you're already trying to expand into new regions. So yeah, so, like, just being more thoughtful and, knowing the why behind this strategy would be my main tip for companies.